I'm your host, Kevin Myers. This is a Fountain News special report with reaction to the first and only vice presidential debate of the 2020 presidential election cycle. Now, this actually appeared to be an actual presidential debate, whereas the last one was just a shouting match that didn't go anywhere because of Trump, as we, to reiterate what we said last week. But props to Pence for being able to speak in an indoor voice. Congrats, you passed kindergarten, unlike your boss. But unfortunately, that didn't stop Pence being able to speak like an adult in a way that seemed articulate. Did not stop him from making just as many false or misleading statements as the president running on his ticket. Now, I'm not trying to say that Harris gave the most truthful debate performance you're ever going to see. That's obviously not true. She also made false or misleading statements, but there was a clear disparity between who made more false or misleading statements. And definitively, Pence made far more false or misleading statements, and we have to call that out. You know, people like to say, oh, liberal media bias. They talk more about Pence's lies than Harris's lies. Well, Pence lied more than Harris. If Pence lied more often than Harris did, then yes, you need to devote more airtime to debunking those lies than Harris's lies, because there's fewer of them. I don't understand how you can how people are just so opposed to fact checks. Like, read the damn fact check. Honestly, all of these present abundant evidence. I've got multiple tabs open with ABC News and CNN. Honestly, despite all their claims of, liberal media fake news with CNN, their fact check is actually the best one I've seen. It actually does the most to call out false or misleading statements made by Harris. So, I mean, from what I'm reading, and by the way, Fox News doesn't even do fact checks of the debates. So, there's literally not a perspective I could get from right-wing media to even see what they're doing. But let's get into the fact check of Pence first, and there is a lot here. First, he echoed the false claims about massive voter fraud resulting from mail-in ballots that the president made last week. And, that is just as untrue as it was a week ago. There is still no evidence of the type of, mass, conspiracy to overthrow the president through the election, through the ballot box that they've been claiming exists. And when you make bold claims like that, like if you are saying that there is massive voter fraud because of mail-in ballots, the burden of proof is on you. You need to provide evidence of that. And the Trump administration has provided no evidence of that. But let's move on past that to probably one of the most important notable lies of the night from Pence being when he compared H1N1 to COVID-19. Specifically, he tried to use H1N1, something that occurred under the Obama administration, to be like, this is a true example of epic mismanagement of an epidemic by a presidential administration compared to our fantastic response on COVID-19. Now, this is tone deaf at best and a demonstrous falsehood at worst, because while it is true, as Pence claimed, that over 60 million Americans contracted H1N1 during that epidemic, the part he leaves out, conveniently, is that just 13,000 Americans died of H1N1. Now, that is tragic. Every human life matters, which is an interesting thing that, they don't seem to acknowledge when it comes to COVID. But again, by comparison, 13,000 H1N1 versus over 200,000 for COVID-19. There is no comparison based on the raw data. Now, yes, COVID-19 has appeared to be more contagious, and yes, it has appeared to be more deadly. But what is also true is that consistently in all the models we've seen, America has broken records, and this is basically the worst case scenario that was predicted by early models. 200,000 was what was predicted if we didn't handle this correctly. And again, the U.S. still carries a disproportionately large number of the world's cases and deaths of COVID-19. So to claim that the Trump administration has done even a remotely decent job with handling this is false. And also specifically to claim they've done a better job than with H1N1 is simply ridiculous. And also the CDC, in regards to Obama's handling of H1N1, actually praised the administration, moderate praise, but did, on some degree, praise their handling, describing their complete, multifaceted, and long-term response to that epidemic. Similar to that is Pence also claimed that the Obama administration left them with nothing to prepare for this pandemic. This is also almost ridiculously false overall. Now, the nugget of truth is that there were in terms of the amount of supplies we had stockpiled, there were some low amounts and some things we had run out of. But the fact of the matter is we also had significant supplies of important things, not enough for the COVID-19 pandemic, but we did have significant stockpiles of things such as ventilators left by the Obama administration. Additionally, the Obama administration left behind a pandemic preparedness office in the White House, which the Trump administration disbanded. So just because you dismantled everything Obama did and forgot about it doesn't mean he didn't leave you with something, because clearly he did. Now, CNN has noted, because I did just echo a point made by Harris during the debate about the Pandemic Preparedness Office, CNN mentions in their fact check on Harris's claim about that not every member of the office was disbanded. Many of them were moved to other positions within the administration. But again, that was something the Obama administration left for the Trump administration. So to claim they left you with nothing when they left you with an office that you disbanded is just not true. Moving on past that is Pence claimed that the Biden administration would pack the Supreme Court. First he asked, will you pack the Supreme Court, to Harris? Then he refused to let her answer and claimed that she would, or that her administration and, Biden's administration that she'd be part of, rather, would pack the Supreme Court. First of all, you don't get to answer for her. The moderator asked her a question. You disingenuously asked her a question. Let her speak, as she actually had to say, I am speaking. That's definitely an important line from the debate. But, it is true. It is ridiculous hearing that kind of claim from Pence. First, because the Biden administration has not explicitly said they would add seats to the Supreme Court at all if elected. They have not been fairly transparent on where they're leaning right now. They have not committed to do it, but they've also not explicitly said they would not do it. So, will you pack the Supreme Court? The phrasing is, a bit ironic coming from Pence, but it's not entirely an unfair question. However, Republicans have made a concerted effort to pack the Supreme Court over the last 5 or 6 years. And that's not just the Trump administration, that's also Mitch McConnell in the Senate. But that's something we'll get more into in a moment when we get to Harris. Now, Pence also claimed that Biden would ban fracking as a part of his administration. That is something that's just completely false, because not only has Biden repeatedly said that he would not ban fracking, he has received strong criticism from Democrats because he won't ban fracking. Honestly, it's something I would criticize Biden for, is the fact that, we do need to ban fracking at some point if we want to achieve some of the goals that Biden has set out. Specifically, in Biden's plan, he has set out goals to reach net zero carbon emissions in the energy sector by 2035 and net zero carbon emissions overall by 2050. Now, in order to reach those, you would have to ban fracking, but that is something Biden has explicitly said he would not do. Now, Pence zeroed in on the fact that Harris did say she would ban fracking if she were elected president, but that's something she said during the primaries. That's something that she would do if she were president. So let me remind you, Mike Pence, Harris is running as the vice president, as you are, and that she has accepted Biden's position on this issue. And ultimately, when Biden's the president and the vice president is largely a figurehead, her position on it really doesn't matter. And moving on is more with environmental issues, as Pence touted the Trump administration's, great efforts to reduce, pollution and emissions and impact on the environment, something that is just ridiculous, because he, in the same argument, also talked about them, cutting and slashing regulations. Well, which is it? Did you slash regulations on polluting the environment, dumping chemicals in rivers, pumping chemicals into our air? Did you slash regulations on that? Or did you curtail those practices? Because those kind of sound mutually exclusive to me. But in addition to that, it is a little rich hearing those types of arguments from an administration that we've heard. They've been in consideration about selling off national parkland. Really, you're going to try and tell us that you're the environmentalist administration? Come on. Now, an explicit claim that we're going to fact check here that Pence made was one about the United States, surpassing the Paris Climate Accord in terms of reducing carbon emissions. Now, this is something that has spread on right-wing websites and has also been incredibly misleading according to those stories. It is a reminder not to trust sources like the Daily Wire, as cited in this Snopes fact check. Now, according to this Snopes fact check, this is explicitly from their website. They rated the claim that in 2019 the United States led the world in reducing carbon dioxide emissions. Again, some of this read on right-wing websites. That has been rated as a mixture of both true and false, truth and falsity. But what they do say is true is, according to the International Energy Agency, the United States achieved the largest absolute reduction in carbon dioxide emissions of any country in 2019. However, it is misleading to say that the U.S. led the world or was the global leader in reducing emissions in 2019, because the U.S. reduced its CO2 emissions by a rate of just 2.9%, while other countries and regions fared far better. Now, this actually kind of brings up an interesting point about the Trump administration more broadly distorting facts regarding how the United States participates in the world. Now, Pence and Trump have both claimed that the U.S. also spends far more in foreign aid than any other country, which is true in raw dollars, but as a percentage of the federal budget, it's nothing compared to how much other countries spend as a proportion of their national budgets. So if you're emitting less carbon to begin with, reducing that by a greater percentage is more meaningful than reducing it by just a raw number. And similarly, if you don't have as many citizens to tax, if you're not bringing in as many tax dollars in the first place, then the raw dollars doesn't matter as much as how much you're spending as proportion of your national budget. But moving on past that is now to a fact check of Harris. Now, the interesting thing here is with these fact checks, conservatives love to claim that, CNN is liberal fake news. But interestingly, of all the news sites I've been on, CNN's fact checks are the most critical of Harris. They by far have the most fact checks on Harris, because I'm looking at ABC News and CNN, and CNN's fact check on Harris is considerably better. It includes more fact checks on false or misleading statements made by Harris. So that's just ridiculous. And I would like to point out that Fox News doesn't even bother to fact check these debates at all. So zip it. But to quote Dr. Evil. But so first, Harris claimed that the Trump administration called COVID a hoax. Now, CNN has rated this claim as misleading. It is also something that the Biden campaign has, edited together sort of misleadingly in their ads as well. To quote CNN, taking it in totality, Trump's comments at the February 28th rally indicate that he is deriding Democrats for attacking his performance on the coronavirus. A full 56 seconds passed between the two clips that the campaign edited together. So they edited two statements together from different parts of a Trump speech. So it is misleading. It's not outright false. Trump made a comparison between how Democrats were talking about COVID and how they talked about impeachment, referring to the impeachment as a hoax, but they were kind of taking that out of context. Additionally, Harris also claimed, coming back to the White House pandemic office, she claimed that the Trump administration got rid of the office, which is true. That's a fact. Pence was like, no, but Pence is lying. Harris was telling the truth. However, CNN does cite that it is more complicated than that because, again, as I said before, many members of that pandemic office were moved to other positions in the White House or other positions in the government. So whether or not that actually had a meaningful impact on the Trump administration's COVID response remains to be seen. But, as Pence claimed earlier, that the Obama administration left with nothing, that's false. But those are largely the two biggest false claims that Harris made in the debates, because there are other fact checks that CNN has done on Harris, but most of them it is not, or actually one final fact check on Harris actually from CNN is that Harris claims that Biden won't raise taxes on those making less than $400,000 a year. That is a true statement, but CNN also states that this requires context and depends on how you define taxes. It says another proposal from Biden to change 401ks could reduce the tax benefits of contributing to those accounts is one of those. And they have also talked about workers, or CNN says that workers could potentially bear some of the cost of raising corporate income taxes, which is something Biden has said he would do. So again, when you look at these, Harris wasn't the most honest person ever, but there is clearly a disparity where most of the things she said had more than a nugget of truth and were misleading or taken out of context, whereas Pence outright lied multiple times. But regarding Harris's performance overall, she was strong on COVID for sure. Actually, we have a clip right now that will show you of her forceful attack on COVID against Pence, which a lot of people said, that she clocked him on that.
Let's talk about respecting the American people. You respect the American people when you tell them the truth. You respect the American people when you have the courage to be a leader speaking of those things that you may not want people to hear, but they need to hear so they can protect themselves. But this administration stood on information that if you had as a parent, if you had as a worker, knowing you didn't have enough money saved up, and now you're standing in a food line because of the ineptitude of an administration that was unwilling to speak the truth to the American people. So let's talk about caring about the American people. The American people have had to sacrifice far too much because of the incompetence of this administration. It is asking too much of the people.
Susan, we talked about
it is asking too much of the people. That they would not be equipped with the information they need to help themselves to protect their parents and their children.
So yes, however, overall, I think that Harris's performance was fairly measured. I think definitely, as many pundits on cable news channels have mentioned, that they were certainly trying to counteract something that is an unfortunate part of being a woman in politics, but that she was trying to measure the fact that if she goes after him too hard or is too tough on him, that she'll be seen as, nasty. And I am using that term because Trump used the term nasty woman to describe Hillary Clinton in 2016. Essentially, they're trying to avoid the nasty woman characterization. It is unfortunate that that's something women have to tiptoe around in politics overall. And I think it's especially unfortunate because overall, I think it resulted in a somewhat weak performance overall by Harris. That's my opinion, but frankly, I do think that she could have gone after Pence harder on some issues. Specifically, I do believe that she was a little bit weak on the Supreme Court. Now, she did dodge the question about whether or not they would add seats to the Supreme Court, but I would also like to mention that there was also a clear line to fight back against Pence when he was asking her, "Are you going to pack the court? Are you going to pack the court?" And then tried to answer for her. First of all, let her speak, as she had to say multiple times during the debate. But she did hit the point of Trump packing the court, specifically making a claim that they packed it full. They've been packing federal courts full of justices, none of which have been white, none of which have been black, was an important point she made. However, I do believe that she left out an important concept here because Pence expanded it to Democrats want to pack the court and not just Biden. The fact of the matter is Democrats want to retaliate for Republicans packing the court. And that's something that I honestly think Harris missed, because she could have expanded to cover McConnell's obstruction of Obama nominees, which is the entire reason. Actually, it was really frustrating during the last debate when Trump was talking about there were over 300 vacant seats that I had to fill. Look how horrible the Obama administration was at filling seats. Well, the reason for that is because during McConnell's time in the Senate, they appointed only 20 judges were confirmed. They obstructed numerous nominations, most importantly being Merrick Garland's Supreme Court nomination, but there were many more before that for absolutely no reason. And many Republicans have even stated that they would have tried to hold that Supreme Court seat vacant if Hillary Clinton won in 2016, which is frankly absurd. But looking at everything here, it is disingenuous at best to claim that Democrats want to pack the court. Republicans are actively packing the court. They have packed the court. They denied Obama a nomination to the Supreme Court and packed in Neil Gorsuch. And then they ignored the precedent that they had set 4 years ago, the rule they made up for why that you couldn't nominate Merrick Garland. They threw that aside and are now nominating someone else to the Supreme Court, packing the court with a second seat. So, as far as I'm concerned, Democrats are entitled to 2 seats on the Supreme Court, and the Democrats could add 3, which would give them, I forget if it's either majority or tie. I am opposed fundamentally to having an even number of justices on the Supreme Court, because who's going to break the tie, essentially? And 4 justices gives you a Democratic majority. However, the reason why 2, because 2 justices leaves you with a Republican majority on the bench. A slight majority, but still a Republican majority. And the reason why that matters is it makes it very difficult to claim Democrats are packing the court when it's like, hey, we just leveled the score. You guys are still in charge here, frankly. And again, we've had bigger and smaller courts in the past. So that's just not an issue. Actually, we will fact check my claim later that I just said that we had bigger courts. I'm not entirely sure about that. But overall, this was an interesting debate. It was, again, nice to see someone from the Republican side who is a skilled debater, as Pence is. It would just be nice if he could debate in the same reality that Americans live in instead of conservative fantasy land. Anyway, that is it for this broadcast here. This was not live. It was pre-recorded. My camera saying it's been over 20 minutes. But please like, dislike, comment below. Maybe you already commented in the chat on the live stream. Please keep it civil, but thanks for watching.